Hi, and welcome to this, my 44th tutorial. I wanted to dedicate just one tutorial to the event pan crop tool, but soon realised that to do it justice, one tutorial wouldn't be enough. It's such a powerful tool with so many features that I need to split it into 3 separate tutorials. In this part, I want to describe the tool in its default mode, the pan crop mode. In part 2, I'll deal with the fundamentals of the tool in mask mode and its basic functions. The last part will consist of a more detailed description of mask mode. I'll also demonstrate the more advanced functionality of the tool in this mode. I'm using Vegas Pro 19 for this tutorial. Users of previous versions of Vegas Pro and users of Movie Studio Platinum 17 or earlier will find that certain icons look different. However, their function hasn't changed. Please note also that Movie Studio Platinum doesn't support pan crop masking, so tutorials part 2 and 3 are therefore not applicable. I'm going to start by placing a noise texture media event onto the timeline. I'll then open up the pan crop tool using this icon. This is the pan crop window, and basically it consists of 6 sections. These are the plugin chain, the preset drop-down list, the toolbar, the properties, the workspace, and the keyframe controller. The keyframe controller has 2 timelines, position and mask. In this tutorial, I'll be dealing with the position timeline, which is the default option. The mask timeline will be dealt with in part 2. I'll deal with each of the 6 sections in turn, starting with the plugin chain section. This, by default, has one entry, pan crop. FX plugins can be added to this chain by selecting the FX Plus icon. The plugin chooser will open, where the required plugin can be selected. The Add, then OK buttons are then selected, and the selected plugin will be added to the chain. With a chain containing multiple plugins, it's sometimes necessary to reorder them to get the desired overall result. This is achieved by clicking and dragging a plugin until it snaps into its new position. Plugins can be temporarily disabled by clicking on the square box. In previous versions of Vegas Pro and Movie Studio Platinum, this box is usually a circle. The preset section consists of a drop-down list of presets, the default being determined by the properties of the source media. Selecting one of the other presets results in the frame being cropped accordingly. You can create your own preset by highlighting the preset name and typing a name that describes your preset. You then click the floppy disk icon. For instance, I've saved a custom preset that crops horizontally whilst maintaining the pixel aspect ratio. You can also delete a preset using the cross icon. Note that for Vegas Pro 18 and earlier, the cross is red. Also note that this icon is only available when a custom preset is showing. After deleting a custom preset, Its name will remain in the preset field until another preset is selected. The name will then not show in the preset drop-down list. Now let's deal with the toolbar on the left of the window. The top icon, the cog, simply toggles the visibility of the Properties section, useful for maximising the workspace when creating simple crops. The next icon is the Normal Edit tool. When used inside the frame, it's used for manipulating the frame. When used outside the frame, it's used for manipulating the workspace. For clarity, I'll refer to the area inside the dotted line boundary as the frame, and everything outside the dotted circle as the workspace. The Zoom Edit tool allows zooming in and out of the workspace. When enabled, left-clicking zooms in and right-clicking zooms out. When used in this way, the workspace will zoom in or out to where the mouse cursor is. You can also use the mouse scroll wheel to do this, but the zoom point will be the center of the workspace display. Note that you need to select the Normal Edit tool to disable the Zoom tool. Enable Snapping. When selected, causes manipulation of the frame to snap to a grid. To override snapping temporarily, hold Shift down. Lock aspect ratio. If this is enabled, any cropping will preserve the aspect ratio. Holding the Control key down will temporarily override the lock-in. Size about center. Self-explanatory really. This forces the frame to resize equally about its center. Holding the Alt key down will temporarily override this setting. The last icon determines how the frame may be moved. It has three options: vertical, horizontal, and both. We'll now look at the Properties section. This section consists of all the parameters that are required to manipulate the frame or workspace. The top set of parameters allow the size and position of the frame to be determined. The default values will depend upon the size of the source media, in this case 700 by 700. As with most other numeric input fields, the value can be changed using any one of three methods. The value can be changed by clicking in the field, then entering the value. It can also be changed by clicking in the field, then using the up-down arrows to increase or decrease the value. The third method is achieved by clicking in the field, then clicking the down arrow to reveal a slider. The slider is then used to increase or decrease the value. Holding the Control key down while dragging the slider will cause the value to change in very small increments. The rotation section has three parameters that allow the frame to be rotated through 360 degrees and moved off center. Keyframe interpolation determines how smooth the transition between keyframes is. By default, a value of 0 is applied to each keyframe. This produces a linear transition. A value of 100 produces the maximum smoothness. It's a little difficult to describe this effect, so I need to show you. At the start of the timeline, I'll move the frame diagonally to the bottom left corner. I'll now move the cursor to the end of the event. Then move the frame diagonally to the top right corner. With both the keyframes' smoothness at the default 0 setting, I'll play the event. You can see that the transition throughout the event is linear. I'll now change the smoothness settings for both the keyframes to 100 and play the event again. You can now see that the transition starts slow, then speeds up, and finally slows down again. The source section has two parameters that determine how the source media is displayed in the output frame. I'm going to leave these parameters until later. They work in conjunction with two other options in the Workspace context menu, which I haven't dealt with yet, so bear with me on this. The Workspace section has parameters that affect the way the workspace appears. Zoom adjusts the magnification of the whole workspace. X and Y offset values determine where the workspace appears in the workspace window. A value of 0 in both parameters will result in the frame being in the middle of the workspace window. The grid spacing parameter sets the size of the workspace grid. The values can range from an 8 by 8 grid to a 64 by 64 grid. The workspace. This is an area consisting of 81 segments, each having an aspect ratio determined by the source media, which is located in the middle. The keyframe controller. If you intend to animate the frame, you need to get to grips with the keyframe controller. In several previous tutorials I've dealt with this subject, but I've used track motion or titles and text keyframing, or both. Pan-crop keyframing is basically the same. Keyframe animation is a mechanism whereby one or more of an object's properties can be made to change over time. Keyframes are placed on the timeline at the desired time interval, with each keyframe corresponding to a set of frame property values. As the timeline cursor progresses along the timeline, the frame will change from one set of properties to the next. The change is interpolated so the animation progresses smoothly. That's a simplistic explanation of keyframing. For more detail, you should check out my tutorials 20 and 33. I showed you an example of keyframe animation earlier when I described the smoothness control. The context menu. If you right-click anywhere in the workspace or frame, a context menu with 6 options will appear. Restore. This will restore the frame to its default state. Center causes the frame to return to the center of the workspace. Flip horizontal and flip vertical. This is self-explanatory. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the next 2 options affect the way the 2 options in the source subsection of the properties section work. Match output aspect. As the name suggests, this option causes the frame to conform to the project's output aspect ratio. With this option selected, selecting Yes in both options in the source subsection of the properties section will cause the frame to zoom in to the source. This effectively eliminates any black bars that may appear outside the source due to the aspect ratio mismatch. You can then move the source frame about to get the best result. With the Stretch to Fill Frame option in the Source subsection set to No, the frame will conform to the project's aspect ratio, but the frame won't zoom in. This will result in a picture-in-picture effect. A strange quirk of this option is that if the Match Output Aspect and Match Source Aspect options are alternatively selected, repeatedly the frame gradually reduces in size, zooming into the source image. Match Source Aspect. Selecting this will change the frame's aspect ratio to that of the source media. If the Maintain Aspect Ratio option in the Source subsection is set to No, the source image will be stretched to fill the project frame dimensions. The Stretch to Fill Frame option in the Source subsection will have no effect on the image under these circumstances. That's enough for this tutorial. If you feel up to it, join me for part 2 in the series, where I'll dip my proverbial toe into the magical world of masking. Meanwhile, if you found this tutorial useful, I'd appreciate it if you would subscribe to my channel. I also welcome any comments you may have. Until the next time, bye for now.